The Earth had been quiet for so many years. The distant hum of humanity's growth had finally settled into a routine that could have been mistaken for peace. But for the Galactic Concord, peace was often just a pause before the next test. The test of strength, intelligence, or in some cases, survival. And now the humans, fragile and young as they were in the vastness of the universe, had caught the attention of something far greater than them. Noon was a nightmare to many, a shadow across the stars. Her race, ancient and powerful, had existed for millennia. They were known for their ability to manipulate fear, to twist minds and leave civilizations trembling before them. When they arrived, entire species fell to their knees bowing in terror before their might. Noon was no different. She had been sent as a scout, a single entity to observe and report. Her mission was simple: observe Earth, assess humanity's potential, and, if necessary, eliminate them. The moment she entered the Uzite, Earth's atmosphere, her form shifted and flowed like liquid darkness falling from the sky. A strange energy pulsed around her, twisting the air, bending the light. Those who happened to look up were greeted with a sight they could not comprehend, a shape too alien to grasp, too large to imagine. The clouds parted around her, and a silence fell over the world as if even the wind dared not move. In the heart of Seoul, Ji-won stood watching the sky. He had seen many strange things in his life, but this was different. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't excited. Just curious. He was a xenolinguist, one of the few humans who had spent years studying the communication of species that had never shared Earth's air. But he wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't prepared for the weight of her presence. His communicator buzzed and a message from the government appeared. His heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a simple alert. It was an order. He was to meet the emissary. Noon had landed and he, Ji-won, was chosen to speak to her. "Ji-won, are you ready?" His assistant, Nari, asked over the communicator. Her voice was calm, but Ji-won could hear the tension in it. "I have no choice, Nari," Ji-won answered, his voice steady. "I'll be there soon." He didn't know what to expect. Noon's kind were not beings that humanity understood, and yet they had left their mark on every galaxy they had visited. They were creatures of power, both physical and psychological. The stories of their conquests were enough to make anyone think twice about standing in their way. Ji-won took a deep breath as he made his way to the landing site. It was a quiet area near the outskirts of Seoul, just beyond the forest. He could already feel a strange pressure in the air, a weight that made it hard to breathe. His feet seemed to drag as if the very ground beneath him was trying to pull him into the earth. When he reached the clearing, Noon was already there. Her form was tall, impossibly tall, and she shimmered like a reflection on the surface of dark water. She was not a humanoid shape, but something more like an outline of terror. A being made of shadow, with countless eyes, if eyes were even what they could be called. They were like cracks in the fabric of the universe, pulsing with an ancient light. Ji-won didn't flinch. He had been trained for moments like this, but nothing in his training prepared him for the presence of Noon. She was like a storm, both beautiful and terrifying, and yet, in that first moment, all Ji-won could think was that she looked lonely. Her voice echoed in his mind before it filled the space between them. "Human," she said, her voice a deep, melodic tone, like the ringing of distant bells. "I am here. You should fear me. All others before you have feared me. Why do you not tremble?" Ji-won's hand stayed steady at his sides, his mind sharp despite the overwhelming feeling that he was standing before something far greater than himself. "I do not fear you," Ji-won said, his voice calm, almost too calm. He could feel Nari's eyes on him from a distance, but he didn't turn. This was his moment, not hers. Noon tilted her head, her form shifting with the motion. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Ji-won saw a flicker of something in her. Not anger, not hate, but confusion. "You do not fear," she repeated, her voice vibrating through the ground beneath him. "No," Ji-won said again. "I do not. Fear is a choice." Noon seemed to grow in size, the darkness of her, form stretching out. The pressure around them thickened, like the air itself was bending to her will. Jiwon felt his heart race, but his words remained steady. "I have seen many things," he said, "and I know fear when I see it. But fear does not make us strong, it only makes us weak." There was a long silence as Noon processed his words, her form swirling and shifting like ink in water. For a long moment, Jiwon thought she might strike, might tear him apart for his defiance. But then something unexpected happened. She laughed. It was a low, haunting sound, not the laugh of a conqueror, but of something more human. "You think me weak?" she asked, amusement in her voice. "No," Jiwon replied, finally stepping forward. "I think you misunderstood us. You are not just a shadow, Noon. You are more. I see beauty in you." Noon's eyes widened. For a moment, there was nothing, just silence. Jiwon had expected many things, but he had not expected this. Noon's form flickered like a broken image on a screen. Her vast presence seemed to shrink for a moment, a shadow retreating into the darkness. "Beauty?" she asked, the word unfamiliar heavy in her mouth. "Yes," Jiwon said, "you are terrifying, but you are also beautiful. You are unlike anything we have ever known. And that is why we do not fear you." For the first time, Noon did not respond immediately. She stood still, the wind around them still. She didn't know what to make of this human before her, but something inside her stirred, something ancient and strange. She was not used to this response. It was not fear. It was something else. "You are not afraid," she murmured. "Why?" Jiwon simply looked up at her, his eyes steady. "Because I see you, Noon, and that is more than any fear can ever show." The silence between them deepened, not in tension, but in understanding. Noon was no longer just an invader. She was something more, and for the first time Jiwon wondered if she would ever understand what he had just told her. The galaxy was full of nightmares, but there was something different about this one, something beautiful. As Noon looked down at him, she realized this was only the beginning. The days following Noon's arrival were strange. No one could understand what had happened between her and Jiwon. The world was filled with confusion and fear, but there was also curiosity. Humanity had never encountered a being like Noon. And now she was here, standing on their soil, watching them. She was both a threat and a mystery, and the world couldn't stop thinking about her. Noon, for her part, seemed to have no clear idea of what to do next. She had come to Earth with one purpose: to evaluate humanity, to decide if they were worth keeping alive. But now something inside her was shifting. Jiwon's words still echoed in her mind. "You are beautiful." She couldn't stop thinking about that. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever called her anything but a nightmare. Every time she tried to understand what Jiwon had meant, she felt a strange pressure in her chest. It was a feeling she couldn't quite place. Noon had never needed to understand emotions before. She was a being of shadow, of power. Fear was all she had ever known. But now, it was different. In the days after their first meeting, Noon observed humanity from a distance. She watched their cities, their people, their lives. They were so fragile, so small compared to her. And yet, they were different from the other species she had encountered. The way they interacted, the way they expressed themselves, it was not something she had ever seen before. Jiwon had been calm in the face of her power, but Noon knew that he was not the only one. There were others who did not fear her. There were others who even welcomed her, not with open arms, but with curiosity. She had to understand why. She decided to test them, to see if they were truly worthy of her respect. And so, she created a series of illusions. They were not threats in the traditional sense, but they were designed to unsettle, to make humans confront their deepest fears. It would be a simple test. If they could survive the fear, they would survive her. Noon began by appearing over Seoul once more, her form stretching across the sky, blotting out the sun. Her eyes, glowing and endless, watched the city below. Then with a snap of her fingers, she sent out the first illusion. It was a sound, a strange, dissonant noise that seemed to come from all directions at once. The air around the people in the streets began to shimmer, twisting in unnatural ways. Some saw loved ones standing before them calling for help, but when they reached out, the figures vanished into nothingness. Others saw images of the future, destruction, death, and chaos. Buildings collapsing, oceans rising, skies burning. The people screamed in terror, stumbling through the streets in confusion. They didn't know if the world was ending or if they were trapped in a nightmare. Noon watched silently, waiting to see what would happen next. The panic spread quickly, but as Noon observed, she noticed something strange. Not everyone was frightened. Some people fought against the illusions, trying to understand what was happening. A group of children no older than 10 stood together in a park, laughing. They didn't seem to see the terror that had gripped the world around them. They were more focused on a game they were playing, giggling and shouting as if nothing had changed. In a nearby building, Jiwon stood watching the chaos. He had already seen through the illusion. It was clever, yes, but not impossible to understand. His mind, trained to deal with the unknown, was clear even in the face of such confusion. He knew that Noon was testing them, but there was something else he saw in the chaos. People helping each other. Despite the fear, despite the confusion, people were reaching out to one another, offering comfort and support. He could see it in their eyes, their strength. They might not have known what Noon was, but they were showing something she had never seen before: humanity's resilience. Jiwon turned to Nari, who had joined him to help navigate the chaos. "We have to communicate with her," he said. "She won't understand unless we show her how we respond. Not with fear, but with our strength." Nari nodded, her face set in determination. "But how do we do that? She's not like anything we've faced before." "We show her who we are," Jiwon said. "Not as weaklings, but as survivors. She's looking for fear, and she's going to find it. But she's also going to see something else, something stronger." Jiwon stepped out of the building and into the streets, Nari following close behind. They both knew that this was a gamble, but it was the only chance they had. As they walked, Jiwon saw the faces of the people around them. Some were still frozen in terror, but others were helping, guiding each other through the nightmare. Woman helped an elderly man to his feet. A teenager held her younger brother's hand, leading him through the chaos with a calmness that was almost unnatural. The people were not giving in to fear. Not completely. Jiwon walked toward the center of the city, Nari beside him. As they approached, he felt the air grow thicker, heavier. Noon's presence was more intense now, almost as if she were hovering just above them. But Jiwon didn't stop. He had made up his mind. He was going to confront her again, just like before. "Noon!" he called out, his voice carrying through the thick air. "We are not afraid of you. You may try to break us, but we will not break. We stand together. We are strong." For a long moment there was silence. Then a shadow flickered above them, and Noon's voice, echoing from the depths of her being, filled the air. "You think you can resist me?" Her voice was colder now, more distant. "You think your strength will save you?" Jiwon didn't flinch. "It will, because we are not afraid of you. We fight for each other. That is what makes us strong." There was a long pause, and for a moment, Jiwon thought she might respond with more illusions, more terror. But instead something changed. Noon's form seemed to soften, her shadow-like body flickering as if confused. "You are strange," she said, almost to herself. "You do not fear. You resist with kindness, with strength." Jiwon nodded slowly. "Yes, we may be afraid sometimes, but we face it, together." Noon was silent for a moment. Then she spoke again, her voice lower, almost thoughtful. "I do not understand you, human. You are not like the others." Jiwon smiled, a small, genuine smile. "That's because we are humans, and that's what makes us different." Noon remained silent as the shadows around her began to fade. The air lightened, the illusions lifting as if they were never there. The people of the city slowly began to realize that the nightmare had ended. But something had changed. They were no longer afraid. They had passed the test. And Noon had learned something she never expected to learn. The days after the test were strange, quiet even. The world was still trying to grasp what had happened. Noon had come to Earth expecting fear, but what she had found instead was something entirely different. She had seen fear, yes, but she had also seen courage, kindness, and strength. There was something in the humans that she couldn't quite understand, something that made them unlike any other species she had encountered. They were unpredictable, and that was what intrigued her the most. Noon continued her observations, hovering above Earth in silence. She was still uncertain about what she had witnessed. She had come as a judge, a ruler, sent to assess humanity and decide their fate. But now she was questioning everything she had been taught. Was fear really the only thing that defined strength? Was it possible that humans, despite their weakness, could be more powerful than she had first believed? Her race had always believed that power lay in control, in the ability to inspire terror. Fear was the greatest weapon they had. But the humans were different. They didn't just fear, they fought against fear. They helped each other even in the darkest moments. Noon had watched them, seen them band together in the face of danger, and she had seen how their bonds were stronger than any weapon or illusion she could create. One day, Jiwan approached her again, this time with Nari by his side. They had become the official mediators between Noon and the human world, acting as guides to help the emissary understand humanity. Noon had not yet learned how to communicate with them in their own language, so Jiwan and Nari had become essential to her understanding. "Are you still watching us, Noon?" Jiwan asked as he stepped into the clearing where she stood. Noon's form was once again a shadow against the sky, her eyes glowing faintly as they fixed on him. She had become a fixture of their world, though her presence was still unsettling to many. It was impossible for humans to forget that she was not entirely one of them. "I am," Noon replied, her voice heavy with uncertainty. "I have been observing. I have seen how you humans fight. You do not bow before fear, you stand against it." Jiwan nodded slowly as if he had expected this conversation. "Yes, we fight because we have no choice. Fear is just another enemy to overcome." "And yet," Noon said, her form shifting slightly, "you are not like the others. You are not afraid of me. You should be. I am a nightmare to your kind." Jiwan smiled softly. "But you're not just a nightmare, Noon. You're more than that. You've seen it for yourself. We are not defined by fear alone. We define ourselves by how we respond to it." Nari, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Humanity has learned to fight for each other, even in the darkest of times. We fight not because we are invincible, but because we are stronger when we stand together." Noon considered their words for a long time, her form flickering with uncertainty. She had been sent to Earth to decide if humanity was worthy of life, but now she wondered if she had misunderstood everything. She had spent centuries as a tool of the conquered, taught to believe that fear was the only force that mattered in the universe. But what if she had been wrong? What if there was another way to see the world? "I do not understand you," Noon said at last. "You are weak, but you resist. You are fragile, but you are strong. How is this possible?" Jiwan looked at her, his gaze steady. "It's possible because we care. We care about each other. That's why we fight. Not for power, but for each other." Nari added, "We fight because we believe in something bigger than ourselves. Our strength comes from our bonds, from our ability to trust, to hope, and to stand by one another." Noon's form shifted again, the darkness around her deepening, and yet she felt a strange tug within her. It was as if something inside her was beginning to awaken, something that had been dormant for centuries. She had been created to be a weapon to judge and destroy. But now, as she listened to Jiwan and Nari, she began to wonder if there was something more to her existence. Could she change? Could she learn to be something more than just a tool of fear? For the first time since her arrival, Noon found herself questioning the rules she had lived by for so long. She had always been taught that fear was the greatest power. But now she was seeing a different kind of strength. It was not the strength of control, but the strength of unity, of trust, and of love. She had witnessed it in the humans, and she had felt it for herself. Do you mean to say, Noon asked slowly, her voice softer now, that strength does not come from fear? That it comes from something else? Jiwon's smile widened. Yes, Noon. Strength comes from within. It comes from how we choose to act in the face of fear, how we choose to stand by those we care about no matter what. Nari nodded in agreement. Strength is not about how powerful we are individually, but how much we can help others, how much we can protect those we love. Noon felt a strange sensation within her. It was something she had never felt before. It was not fear, nor was it power. It was something else entirely. Something warm. She had spent her life as a being of shadow, of darkness, but now she felt a flicker of light inside her. It was faint, almost too small to notice, but it was there. I do not know if I can change, Noon said quietly. I have been created to be something else. I have been created to be fear. Jiwan's expression softened. You don't have to change all at once, Noon. You don't have to be afraid of who you are. You can learn, and more importantly, you can choose. Noon was silent for a long moment, processing the weight of Jiwan's words. Could she really change? Could she learn to see the world in a different way? She had been created to bring terror, but perhaps there was more to her existence than that. She looked down at Jiwan and Nari, her glowing eyes softening for the first time. I will try, she said quietly. I will try to understand. Jiwan nodded. That's all we ask, Noon, that you try. As Noon stood there contemplating what she had just learned, she felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. She was no longer just an emissary, no longer just a being of shadow. She was something more, something new. And for the first time, since she had arrived on Earth, she didn't feel so alone. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Noon felt ready to walk it. And perhaps, just perhaps, she would learn that fear was not the only thing that could guide her. The days after Noon's decision to change were difficult. It wasn't easy to forget everything she had known about herself. She had been created to bring fear and destruction, but now she was trying to understand something completely different. Humans with their strange emotions and connections had shown her another path. They had shown her what it meant to fight for something other than power, to fight for each other. But Noon was still uncertain. She had tried to understand their ways, but it felt like she was standing in a place where she didn't belong. Every time she observed the humans, she was filled with questions. How could they care so much for each other? How could they fight for people they didn't even know? Was this really strength? Was this what she had been searching for? It wasn't until she met Jiwon again that she realized she had to make a choice. She could no longer stand in the shadows of doubt. Noon had to decide what kind of being she wanted to be. Would she continue to serve the conquered, her creators, and continue to spread fear? Or would she choose to become something different? Protector, a guardian of the humans she had come to admire. Jiwon met Noon at the edge of a forest outside Seoul, the city still buzzing with life behind them. Nari was with him, standing at his side. Both of them had seen the change in Noon. The way her shadowed form seemed to shift, the way her eyes no longer glowed with the same cold intensity. They could see that she was struggling. She wasn't the same being who had arrived on Earth a few weeks ago, but they also knew that Noon had to make her own decision. Do you feel it, Noon? Jiwon asked softly, his voice steady. Do you feel the change? Noon looked at him, her glowing eyes deep with thought. She didn't speak for a long time. The air between them was heavy with anticipation. She wanted to speak, to say something, but the words were stuck inside her. "Yes," she said finally, her voice quiet. "I feel it. But I do not know what to do with it." Nari stepped forward. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. We've all been where you are. Uncertain, unsure. The only thing you need to decide is who you want to be. Do you want to stay the same? Or do you want to change?" Noon's shadowy form flickered as she considered Nari's words. "I do not know if I can change. I have been this way for so long. I was created to be a nightmare, to bring terror." Ji-won's gaze softened. "But you are not just a nightmare, Noon. You are more than that, we all are, and we can all choose to be something else. I do not know if I am strong enough to make that choice," Noon said quietly, almost to herself. "I do not know if I can be good." Nari's voice was gentle but firm. "Being good isn't about being perfect. It's about the choices you make, about learning from your mistakes and standing up for what's right. That's what makes you strong, Noon." Ji-won nodded. "It's not about power. It's about understanding and love. It's about how you use what you have to protect others." For the first time, Noon felt something stir inside her that wasn't fear, wasn't darkness. It was warmth, like a tiny spark of light inside her. She could feel it, the pull of something new. The way the humans cared for one another. The way they fought not for glory, but for survival. They fought for their families, their friends, their communities. That was the kind of strength Noon had never understood before. She closed her eyes, letting their words sink in. "I have always been afraid," she said softly. "Afraid of being weak. Afraid of not being able to control what I am. But now I am afraid of something else." "What are you afraid of, Noon?" Ji-won asked. "I am afraid of not being able to change," she said, her voice full of uncertainty. "Afraid that I will always be the thing that brings fear." Nari stepped forward, her expression kind but resolute. "You have already started changing, Noon. You've made the choice to learn to understand. That's the first step. We all start somewhere." Noon looked at them both, her mind racing. She had lived for so long with the certainty that she was a force of destruction. She had been created to judge, to destroy, and to leave fear in her wake. But now she was standing at a crossroads. She had the power to choose her own path. She could continue to be what she had been created to be, or she could forge a new future. "What if I fail?" she asked, her voice full of doubt. "What if I cannot protect them? What if I am not strong enough?" Ji-won smiled. "You will fail sometimes, everyone does, but that doesn't mean you stop trying. Strength is not about being perfect, Noon. It's about being there for those who need you even when you don't have all the answers." Noon was silent for a long time, her shadowed form flickering in the soft light of the setting sun. She had always thought that fear was what made her powerful. That control was the key to everything. But now, as she looked at Ji-won and Nari, she realized something. Fear wasn't what made her strong. It was the willingness to learn, to grow, and to care for others. It was the choice to protect, not destroy. Finally, Noon spoke, her voice soft but full of resolve. "I will choose. I will choose to protect. I will choose to be something more than fear." Ji-won's smile widened. "That's all we ask, Noon. That you choose." Nari nodded. "We believe in you." For the first time since her arrival, Noon felt a sense of peace inside her. She was no longer a creature of shadows and fear. She was something more. She was a protector, a guardian, and she had made the choice to stand with the humans, to learn from them, and to fight for them. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be moments of doubt, of fear. But Noon knew that she could face them, because now she was not alone. She had made the choice to stand with the humans, and together, they would face whatever came next. And for the first time, Noon felt like she had found her place in the world. The sky above Earth was quiet now, as if it knew the change that had taken place. Noon stood on the edge of a high mountain, her form still dark but now tinged with something new. A soft glow, a light that hadn't been there before. It wasn't the blinding light of power, but a gentle light that came from within, born from her choice to change. She had decided who she would become. The decision wasn't easy, and she knew it wouldn't be simple. She had lived for so long as a being of fear and darkness. She had been trained to bring destruction, to serve as a tool of the conquered. But now, the path ahead was different. She had made her choice. She would protect. She would fight for the humans, for the world she had come to care for, even if she wasn't entirely sure what that would mean. Jiwan and Nari had been with her every step of the way, guiding her through the struggle. But now they had a different challenge. The world was beginning to accept Noon for what she had become, but there were still many who feared her. There were still many who saw her as a weapon, a force of destruction, and they weren't ready to trust her. They had seen the power she could wield. They had seen the terror she could bring, and they were still afraid. But Noon was not afraid of that anymore. She had made her decision, and she knew that the path would be long. There would be mistakes, there would be moments of doubt, but there would also be moments of triumph. And in those moments she would prove to herself and to the world that she was not just a nightmare. A week after Noon's decision, Jiwan and Nari took her to a small village on the outskirts of Seoul. The village had been struggling, hit by natural disasters that had torn through the area. People had lost their homes, their crops, their sense of safety. The situation was dire, and the government had been slow to provide help. The villagers were desperate. "Do you think they'll accept me?" Noon asked, her voice soft as she looked down at the small group of people who had gathered in the village center. She could feel their eyes on her, full of fear and curiosity. They had heard the stories, but they didn't truly understand what she had become. She was still the same creature who had come to Earth with only darkness in her heart. Jiwan placed a hand on her shoulder. "They don't know you yet, but they will. You've shown them who you are. Now you have to show them that you can help." Nari nodded in agreement. "They'll see your strength not just in your power, but in your choice to protect. That's what will change their hearts." Noon took a deep breath, her shadowy form flickering in the sunlight. She had learned a lot in the past few weeks. She had learned to listen, to understand, to feel the warmth of kindness, and now it was time to act on that knowledge. She stepped forward, moving toward the crowd of villagers. As she did, there was a moment of silence. People stared at her, unsure of what to expect. Noon could hear their hearts racing. She could feel their fear, but she could also feel their need for hope. "I am Noon," she said, her voice steady and calm. "I know you fear me. I know what I am capable of. But I am not here to harm you, I am here to help." The villagers looked at each other, whispering among themselves. Some took a step back, afraid of what she might do. Others stood their ground, watching her closely. One of the elders, a woman with graying hair and wise eyes, stepped forward. "What do you want from us, Noon?" she asked, her voice firm but not unkind. "What makes you think we can trust you?" Noon looked at the woman, meeting her gaze. "I do not ask for your trust," she said. "I only ask for the chance to prove myself. I will help you rebuild. I will use my strength to protect you, to keep you safe. But I cannot do it alone. I need your help too." The woman nodded slowly, still uncertain but willing to listen. "And if you fail, what then?" "I will try again," Noon replied simply. "I will never give up." For a moment there was silence, then the elder spoke again. "You have the chance to prove yourself, Noon. We will give you that chance, but do not expect us to forgive you quickly. Trust is earned, not given." Noon nodded, understanding. "I will earn it." Over the next few days, Noon worked alongside the villagers. She used her power to clear debris, to help rebuild homes, to create barriers against the floods that threatened the area. Her shadowy form was no longer the terrifying sight it once was. Now, it was a symbol of protection, She worked with the villagers, helping them gather food, providing them with warmth when the nights grew cold. It wasn't easy. Many people still watched her warily, unsure if they could trust her. But slowly, they began to see what Jiwan and Nari had seen in her. They saw her commitment, her desire to help. She didn't just use her power for herself. She used it for them, for the people she had come to care about. And in those moments when the villagers smiled at her or thanked her, Noon felt a warmth she had never known before. It was not the cold warmth of control, but the warm light of connection. She was no longer a creature of fear. She was a protector, a guardian, and slowly the world was starting to see that. As the days passed, Noon found herself growing more comfortable in this new role. She had once feared that she would never fit in, that she would always be an outsider, a being of darkness. But now she saw that it was possible to change. It was possible to choose a different path, to choose love over fear, protection over destruction. And when she stood on that mountain once again looking down at the world below, she no longer felt the weight of her past. She felt free, light, and ready for whatever came next. She had made her choice. She had chosen to be something more than a nightmare. She had chosen to be a light in the darkness. For the first time in her life, Noon knew who she was. She was not just a being of shadows. She was something more. She was part of this world, and she was ready to protect it.